Familiar faces here. It's great to see you all again. There will be a short test afterwards. But we're starting half an hour late, so what does that leave me, 15 minutes, or should I just continue to progress here? We'll try to make up a little bit of time here. I was asked to talk about entrepreneurial innovation originally for today, and that's an interesting set of words. Entrepreneurship is startups. Starting something brand new. Innovation, of course, we all understand what that is. But they seem almost to be redundant. You think about every time somebody starts something that's new, but as it turns out, most of the entrepreneurial startups are not new ideas, not new products and services. They're just somebody perhaps with better relationships, better service, better pricing, something like that. There's this constant struggle between good management in existing companies and entrepreneurial innovators who are both starting something new and also getting a new venture off the ground at the same time. So it's new, as it were. So this struggle between good management and entrepreneurial innovators is something I call the innovation dilemma. Here. So when it comes to innovation, you have a choice. You could soar up into the great beyond, going for the sky, going for something that's truly radical in terms of innovation, or you can keep your feet on the green grass. In case you fail, it's not too far to fall. So for some examples of that, you're obviously in the healthcare business. So you look at pharma. Actually, this is a slide from some Humira background presentation showing some inflammation here in the body. But pharma can give you billions of dollars in terms of revenues, huge ROI. On the other hand, it's very risky, as we know. It takes an average of something like 16 years from preclinical candidates to making that final market candidate choice. And it may cost $800 million to $1 billion to develop. So a lot of risk, a long time on the horizon. It's difficult on a pharma product to get pipeline. How do you go pipeline? Most companies end up buying it. So on the other hand, you have a lower risk here with food. Hamburgers. Everybody's got to eat. So people love hamburgers for the most part, I guess, unless you're a vegetarian. Hamburgers can be developed in less than a year, tested very nicely. Probably your neighbor could loan you enough money to start a small store, and you don't need a doctor's prescription to eat one. So there's lots of ways to look at innovation here. The dilemma, as we said before, is between good management, looking at existing businesses, trying to run things profitably quarter to quarter, reducing risks wherever possible, reducing costs, and getting competitive edge. I mean, part of the strategic question at Abbott and other companies, basically, when it comes to corporate strategy, is what businesses should we be in? How do we get a competitive edge over our competition? And how do we make money? And so you've got this spin-off coming up, or this division of companies between PICO, pharmaceutical products, and DECO, diagnostics and the rest. And it's geared to that same answer for how do we get competitive advantage, how do we make money, how do we create more value for stakeholders out there in the marketplace. So good managers are all about continually improving that business. On the other hand, the other half of the dilemma is that companies need innovation to progress and growth over long term. If you don't have good innovation going on, either minor innovations or radical major innovations, what you have is a slowing of growth or even a decrease here over time. And we'll show you some examples of that in a minute. But again, the risks are great. Profit, return on investment horizons, investment period might be unknown. The greater the innovations, the more uncertainty here that you have. Now, who is best suited to do this kind of innovation? Well, again, entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are difficult to control. The more the disruptive the promotion or the innovation is, if this thing works or not, the more you need somebody like an entrepreneur. And the more radical the innovation, a lot of times the less your key account large customers are interested in it because they want just better versions of what they currently have here. Entrepreneurs are also difficult to control. You think about a famous entrepreneur recently deceased, Steve Jobs. He started the company with Steve Wozniak and then got fired because he's too difficult to control, too difficult to get along with. Let's look at a couple models from school, at the graduate school that we use in the Innovation and Risk course. It's helpful to define innovation when we talk about it from minor innovation to what we call disruptive foundational change. So 95% of innovation is in this minor to major improvements on existing businesses. And what you have is a situation where nothing really changes in terms of structure, in terms of distribution, customer groups, this kind of thing. I would say that, again, the splitting up of the company here is a precursor to trying to get major improvements or perhaps even disruptive improvements. Now, disruptive innovation, the other 5% of innovation up here, I guess my pointer's not working. Basically, you're looking at the unknown. You don't have known technical solutions. You have to do adaptive problem solving. You have to go out and learn new things in order to solve these new problems. In fact, Einstein said, we cannot solve new problems with the knowledge that existed when we created those problems. So you have to get out and learn new things in order to solve those problems. A lot of times, too, with the disruptive innovation, you have what we call step effects, which are social, technical, technological, economic, or political effects, where things do change. So in that 5%, you're seeing changes perhaps in customer groups, in distribution channels, technologies, sometimes blockbuster returns economically, regulatory issues that change or come up, and a lot of different things that are happening. So who is Genrikh Altshuler and TRIZ? Anybody remember from the innovation course? You took that? Genrikh Altshuler was a naval Russian officer who started to study patents for the Soviet Navy. He analyzed over 1 million patents and discovered these percentages that we show. 77%, 18%, or 95% sustaining or minor major innovations. And that rare 5% of patents, 4% were platform changes and only 1% were truly society changing or affecting type of things. He's actually, this is right after World War II, and his stuff is still current today. So if you look up TRIZ and Six Sigma, you'll find current books on engineering principles for physical innovation. And he believed in a lot of principles of opposites. So if, in this example, we might want a new material that is stronger than steel, but lighter than steel. Now, steel is very rigid, so we want something also that's flexible. So you want something stronger than steel, lighter than steel, and more flexible than steel. What would that material be? I'll give you a hint, my favorite hobby. Okay, graphite. Exactly. So graphite shafts, graphite heads, the way that they weave the graphite together might be a material that came out of something on the TRIZ method here. One of my ex-students actually came up with something that is a great example of a disruptive innovation, which is the plow. So historically, when you think about the plow, how did that affect foundational changes in society? Any guesses? All right. None of you are ex-farm boys or farm girls. So essentially, the plow enabled hunter-gatherers to settle down, stop wandering around, and build societies, build surpluses, start trade, retail shops, and of course the inevitable bureaucracy, right, with police and city employees and governments and armies. But this is a pretty foundational change. All the step effects are here when you think about the plow. And of course, recently, anybody think of any other 1% foundation changes in terms of disruptive innovation? The internet, absolutely. Good example. Internet, so disruptive, and so important today. And think of all the industries and businesses that the internet has killed off. It no longer have many travel agents. They're pretty much a thing of the past. Everybody loves booking their own flights and so on. What about music stores? What's happening to bookstores? A whole host of businesses are disappearing or being disrupted because of this radical foundational innovation, and life will never be the same. So this is a graphic depiction of the innovation spectrum model that we use. It probably should be in a circle or an infinity sign, because as a innovation becomes disruptive, like the airline industry, for example, initially it wasn't very disruptive, it wasn't very good, nobody really wanted it. You know, railroads and steamships and overland freight all laughed about the Wright brothers plane. Could barely carry one person, so no threat there. But fast forward another 20 years, and all of a sudden you have air freight starting to disrupt those segments. There's still a limitation, of course, in terms of how big planes can get. Although the latest Boeing 747Z or whatever it is, takeoff weight is nearly 1 million pounds. So it's getting up there to compete with ships and railroads and everything else. But over time, as you get competition, the airline industry becomes sustaining again. So it's kind of in this endless infinity loop here. It starts out on the sustaining side, gets to be disruptive potentially, and as competition and large customers in the world adopts it, it becomes sustaining again, even with continuous improvements. So let's look at some companies as examples, half a dozen companies here that chosen to think about entrepreneurial innovation and some commonalities here that we can find.